This program is brought to you by the partners of A Rood Awakening International. Help others find truth. Support A Rood Awakening International today.
Life rarely goes the way we think it will. We think we're headed in one direction, but then the Almighty seems to put us on a detour that has absolutely nothing to do with the thing that we thought He was steering us toward. That is until we look back and realize that He had us on track the whole time. Not just the track that we thought we'd be on. We need to remember the things that He has promised us and just go along with the detours because the promise will come to pass. Even in things we don't consider to be spiritual matters like our work life or that dream business idea that the Almighty put inside of you. Tonight we're going to learn more about how to make that vision from heaven a reality. Because it's the end of the sixth day, the sun is set, and this is Shabbat Night Live!
It's going to be a great show tonight.
It will be.
Stand by, studio. 30 seconds.
Thank you. Michael?
Ah, thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Ellie.
Well, Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. You know, it's coming fast. Don't blink. There's only 7 weeks left, 7 weeks till Passover 2018. This year's theme is priests and kings. We'll talk more about that in just a minute, but how would you like to be a king or queen of your own financial destiny? Is that something we should be talking about on the Sabbath? Well, absolutely, because if the Almighty has put a dream business in your heart, it has become a spiritual matter between you and Him. And tonight, our guest might have the information that you need to start putting that dream into action. It is syndicated radio host, author, entrepreneur, Josh Tolley. Joins us tonight for the final episode of Faith and Finances. Now, speaking of hosts, we're going to bring on my co-host in just a minute here, but first, let's check our astronomically and agriculturally corrected biblical Hebrew calendar. Today is the 4th Shabbat in the month of Shavat, the Hebrew month of Shavat. And as we mentioned last week, this is the time that Yeshua was baptized and began His ministry. And that ministry only lasted 70 weeks, exactly 70 weeks, not 3.5 years, 70 weeks. It's true. And you can learn all about it in our brand new calendar, now available for pre-order at roodawakening.tv/calendar. Now, please welcome my co-host for this evening. She is the Director of Ministry Development for A Rood Awakening International, Anny Reed.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Anny.
It's good to have you here on this wonderful Shabbat. We're
indeed.
learning to be more independent and financially stable.
We've been very excited about this because you and I got to interview Josh personally. And we were all very excited about what he had to say last week. And this week, we're going to get into more about how to get dreams into action. And you had a dream that you talked about was the vineyard.
Yes. And it's still very much a dream for me. It's been for many years, but a vineyard with a bed and breakfast. And and Josh did share some practical means of getting that dream to be a possible reality without having to go into debt, which a lot of people that are in or that have their own businesses start out with debt. They get a small business loan, they buy property, they buy equipment, and so we start out in the negative to begin with.
Right, and Josh would argue that that's the wrong way to go about it. And he thinks outside the box. You know, I expressed a vision of mine with him, and he went totally left field with it in things that I had never even thought of. Things that, you know, ways to leverage, you know, using sponsorships and this and that and the other thing, so you don't have to go into debt. He's got a really great way of thinking about things, and that continues in his books, which are Evangelpreneur, thank you.
And don't, or Quit Your Job.
Quit Your Job or Die.
That's right.
Yeah, some great books, and he talks at a real basic level that anyone can understand. I'm enjoying reading the books because it's not, you know, super high up. You don't have to have an MBA to understand this. And he just has a real great way of explaining how you can make your dream happen and happen in a way that is biblical. Because, you know, Yehovah does not want us to be in debt right from the get-go, like you said.
No, and honestly, we're never going to be rich working for somebody else. It's
Right.
just the reality. We will tap out on our maximum potential at any company that we're at. There will be a limit that we reach.
Right.
But being on your own, that limit is endless.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Because as a believer, I mean, if you put it this way, if Yehovah is going to bless you with a huge business and millions of dollars potentially, he trusts you to do the right thing with it. Don't be afraid to be successful, I think is Josh's message. Because if you have the right heart, Yehovah can trust you with it, and you can just go with it, and it's not wrong.
And don't be afraid to dream, whatever it may be.
Right. And I know a lot of our viewers have had a dream that, I wish things would just be on sale at a Rood Awakening. Well, your dream has come true.
That's right. This month is it. 15% off the entire bookstore. Now, there are a couple of exceptions, but for the majority part, it's 15% off the entire bookstore. And please take advantage of the sale. We won't have one like this. Actually, I don't think we have one like this on the entire bookstore all year.
No, it's the only chance. So if there's something you see in the store that you want. Now, this excludes, like you said, one thing in particular, the love gift. Of course,
we'll get to in a minute.
That's right. We'll get to more explain that in a minute. But you can get new products like the Health Awakening show that we have, or the Red Sea Crossing, or even the Chronological Gospels large print edition. I mean, anything.
That one is definitely one that you should own. Take advantage of the 15% off. I think it's the first sale that we've had on the large print edition.
Yes.
And
other than Mission Monday.
Other than Mission Monday, but it's a wonderful product. It's extremely large print in comparison to our smaller, regular chronological gospels. And it's just beautiful.
And in fact, it was so popular that we decided, why don't we make all of the new books that we're doing larger print? And so you'll find that in the Red Sea Crossing, as a matter of fact, and even in my book, the new book, Escape Route. The name almost escaped me for the. So in all of our books, we're trying to do larger print. It just makes it easier to read. It's more relaxing to read, as a matter of fact, too. So you're not reading a bunch of fine print. But anyway, so yes, all month this month you can get 15% off, and that includes our new calendar, The Secrets of the Revelation. Here's what it looks like on your screen here. You might recognize that photo because that photo is from the Chronological Gospels, Season 2. It's all about the Revelation. So we've included it here. So in this calendar, usually in our calendar we like to have facts about this or that or the other thing. Well, this is all about facts about the Revelation, things you don't normally know. Interesting things like, well, we know this one. Hell is not what you think it is.
No, it's not.
All right, so details about that. The connection with the seed of Satan and Hitler. There is a connection there. Michael explains it. The true identity of the beasts as prophesied by Daniel. And a surprising truth about the name of blasphemy. That one might really blow you away because it really hits home with today, with the things we're seeing all over the world and the rise of Islam. There's your hint. Now, we also want you to not only take advantage of things we have in our bookstore and things like that, but prayer. That's what we're more concerned about, is just being with you to get through those hard times in life. And that's why we have a prayer page. It's roodawakening.tv/prayer. And once those prayers are answered, go to roodawakening.tv/testimonies and tell us about it. And today we actually have a couple of prayer requests right in front of us here.
We do. We have one from DJ, prayer for our families with children and adult children with special needs. Prayer for healing and deliverance for the children, discernment, perseverance, and the unity of parents. And that's something we don't think about often, too, is, it does require a lot more patience and understanding. And they are strong individuals to be able to live with it on a daily basis and handle it. So.
Yeah, special needs children, that requires special parents.
Yes, it
really does. Because, it requires a lot more, like you said, patience and understanding. And it really helps a person grow. Some of the families we see that have special needs kids, they're some of the most mature people and loving people that you'll ever meet.
And again, most patient. I have a friend who has a son that's deaf in both ears. And I mean, just the patience that she has with him. And, he's 3, and so he's hard. It's difficult for him to communicate, and it's difficult for her to understand. But there's a lot of love and patience that is involved in that relationship. So it's beautiful.
Yep, I see that too with my sister, actually. She has a child that they adopted from Haiti, and they suspect that he might have something they didn't realize before he was born, maybe fetal alcohol syndrome or something like this. And so he's struggling with what's right and what's wrong, and they're trying to teach him through that. And he's 15 years old, and it's becoming a real struggle for them. So I might just pray for her in this as well, because it matches right up with this. And also we have another request from Christina. She says, twin brother and sister are not seen or heard from in over a decade. Wow. So please pray for their whereabouts to become known and for deliverance from bondage and for their salvation and for a family reunion. Well, we've seen miracles even in the secular world where that happens on television all the time. So that is completely within the realm of Yehovah's possibilities.
Amen. Do you want to pray, Scott, since you want to pray for your sister?
Thank you. Why don't you pray with us? Yehovah, we want to thank you for our families, for all those watching, and for our families here sitting at this table. And because we have prayer requests today regarding family. For those with special needs, I know that DJ had submitted a prayer, and my sister, Father, I just pray that these families would call upon you for the answers. Because if we try and figure it out in our own strength, we're not going to have the answers, and we're just going to keep struggling. So we pray that you would download the answers to these parents and that they would be receptive to hearing your voice and taking your advice and acting upon it so that these problems could be overcome or at least worked through for the benefit of everyone in the family. So we thank you for that in advance. And we want to pray also for Christina about the big sister and twin brother that have not been seen in a decade. Father, this is not knowing is sometimes the hardest thing for people to accept when this kind of thing happens. And so, Father, I pray for a miraculous reunion. We agree with Christina on this, that there would be a reunion in your timing, whenever that is. And in the meantime, that you would just offer Christina peace of mind in her heart. And for anyone else who's worried about them, that you would just look after those who are out there and calm those who are waiting for them at home. So we thank you in advance for these things. In Yeshua's name, amen.
Amen.
And again, if you would like to submit a prayer request, please do so at roodawakening.tv/prayer. And also, if you have a testimony, roodawakening.tv/testimonies. We have a testimony of Thanksgiving. Passover.
Yes, yes, we do.
Biggest one ever is coming.
We have a big announcement, and that is that worship will be led by John Waller. Now, if you're not familiar with his music, you are familiar with the movies that his music plays in, which is War Room. He did Fireproof. He's done a lot of different Christian productions in the past. He's an exceptional singer, has done a lot of famous songs that you're familiar with, and he's going to join us. Wow. And he's very excited about being involved with a group that is messianic. And I think that's the best part about this worship leader. You know, for a mainstream Christian leader to be excited about participating in a messianic Passover event with messianics, is he wants to learn. He's at that learning phase of his life, and it's an exciting time for us as a ministry to know that he's going to join us. That is great. And you know, it's just wonderful that he would be searching, and that's what really gets us going, because we're all about restoring the Hebrew roots of the Christian faith. So if people can put aside the fairy tales and go, what did Yeshua really do? Yeah, what is this really about? Oh, we love it when people ask that question of themselves, because that's where truth starts coming alive, and your Bible goes from being this thick to seeming this thick, because all of a sudden the possibilities are endless, and Yehovah is way bigger than you thought he was. And I mean, for every speaker that is joining us this year, I mean, that's very much at the core of why they're joining us at Passover. From Perry Stone to Joel Richardson to Bill Cloud, I mean, they obviously understand that there is something that they want to join in with at this Passover Seder, at this Passover event, something that they're searching for, answers that they're also seeking. And it's wonderful to know that we can come together as a body, not necessarily as the same denomination or religion, but as a body, and know that we are keeping a feast day for the Almighty. Right. A Passover, that we are rehearsing the Passover Seder, and that it's, you know, something that we are to practice now for prophecy in the future. That's really neat that we can all have that common denominator. Yes. So be a part of it. Go to Rood Awakening, well, you could go to Rood Awakening and see, but you'd see a banner there that would take you to PassoverCharlotte.com. That's the more direct route. Go to PassoverCharlotte.com. You can find out all about there and get your tickets there as well. That's right. And don't forget that we are holding a special this month, in the month of February, where it's $25 per adult for this month only. After this month, we will go to full price on our Passover tickets. Right. Please take advantage. The reason that we're continuing to extend specials is that so that you can join us. Right. We don't want money to be a factor as to why you're not there. So we ask that you pray about it. Hopefully we can see you there and have the opportunity to meet you. And that's adult and youth, I understand, too. Oh, really? Adult and wonderful. Youth tickets. Yep. Now, we just have a little bit of time left, but we would be amiss if we did not show you our love gift. Now, this is a love gift. It's a special guest love gift from Bill Cloud. It's called The Spirit of Esau. It is based on his book, Esau Rising. Very, very interesting information. You want to get this love gift. For a donation of $50 or more, we will send you the teaching
For 100 or more, we'll send you the teaching, Bill's book, and this mezuzah, the 12 tribes of Israel. You'll see the jewels there for the 12 tribes from the ephod. And you can just hang this in your home as a reminder to always follow the way of Yehovah.
And I just want to insert this, just in case you're wondering about the love gift. This is what the back of his book just simply says. Battling worldly desires, those who believe in God and the Bible are under attack.
Wow.
And that in itself should strike you as interesting. Michael believed in this gift so much that he wanted it to be available to our partners. He believes in this teaching. It's an exceptional book and it's exceptional teaching as well.
Indeed. Yeah, Michael was full on board of this. So get the teaching. Again, there's only a little bit of time left to get that. Well, a little bit of time, about 20 days or so. But it's a short month. Keep that in mind. Now, coming up in just a few minutes, the final episode of Faith and Finances with Josh Tolley. Josh opened my eyes about giving in this whole scenario that he's bringing up. He mentioned how some churches promote giving from their credit card, which causes unnecessary debt, and is certainly not the will of the Almighty. We need your support of this program, but we don't ever go into debt for it. If you can give abundantly, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for that. If you can only give a few dollars, that's great too. Yehovah will always supply our needs, both yours and that of this ministry. If you feel that is your calling to support the truth of the Messiah in this ministry, as you see it happen on Shabbat Night Live and the Chronological Gospel Show and other programs we have, thank you in advance. Every gift is appreciated. Every giver gets a thank you letter from us. And every one of those letters is prayed over by a group of believers before it gets mailed. Anny and I are often part of that group, and so we can tell you, we can verify that that happens every week. So thank you very much. One way that you can give is also through that wonderful love gift we just talked about. So stay tuned. Here are some details on how you can participate in that.
Good and evil are constantly at war within each of us, and the one we allow to lead our thoughts and emotions will ultimately determine our destiny. In a special guest teaching, available only in February, Bill Cloud presents The War Within Us and the War Around Us in The Spirit of Esau.
The story of Jacob and Esau is not just about two men who lived a long time ago, but it's actually establishing a pattern for us. It's helping us to see the two opposing forces in the world.
The Spirit of Esau is a special teaching that is not on YouTube and it's not available for sale. But we'll send you this exclusive teaching as our thanks for your love gift donation of just $50.
If we're not careful, that Esau within us, that evil inclination, wants to rise up and dictate what we do, tell us how we think.
In addition to the special teaching, we'd also like to give you two more gifts. With a donation of $100 or more, we'll send you the teaching, plus Bill Cloud's best-selling book, Esau Rising, and the 12 Tribes of Israel mezuzah. Hang the mezuzah in your doorway as a reminder to live your life as a member of God's family, Israel. Make your donation now, $50, $100 or more, to receive these special gifts. The Spirit of Esau collection is available only in February.
Jacob is a pattern for you and I to look at in the sense that this is what we're called to do. When we're born again, this is who we're to be.
Get these special gifts now as a constant reminder of who you are in Messiah. The born-again spirit that is Jacob versus the desires of the flesh personified in Esau. Act now to receive the Spirit of Esau teaching, plus Bill Cloud's book, Esau Rising, and the 12 Tribes of Israel mezuzah. Call or visit our website to make your love gift donation now.
So you've discovered that you believe a little differently than you did at church. You're trying to get together with some people, but you're not sure if such people even exist. And, well, where do you start? How do you do this? Are you even qualified to start a fellowship? Well, we have someone who can answer these questions for us. The director of Aviv Fellowships, Matthew Hall.
Hey.
Welcome, Matthew.
Nice to be here.
Now, last time we explained a little bit about where you come from, and you've had the experience of many people where you started investigating the Bible for your own, ended up being alone,
exactly,
out in the wilderness,
right,
and then realized that home groups, small fellowships is really the way to go, and that's why you asked Michael Rood to start Aviv Fellowships at A Rood Awakening. So tell us, why is this called Aviv Fellowships, and what makes it so special?
Well, I think it's good that you asked that question, because there's a lot of different groups or fellowships or even websites that have Hebrew roots type people or Messianic, there's a lot of different terms floating around out there. The thing that sets us apart, and one of the things that I know personally me and my wife were running up against, was the feast days. When do we celebrate the feast? And we had learned early on that it was important to keep the feast days according to the agricultural and the biblically corrected calendar that Rood Awakening and Michael Rood have put together. And so we really had strong convictions about, of course we're not going to get the feast exactly right, but at least we can do our best to keep it during the right time and observe it during those times. So what we found is whenever the feast would roll around, we'd be like, well, we could do it here, we could do it here. Well, they're on this calendar and they're on that calendar, and the days are off, and it's all this stuff, and trying to coordinate all these things, and well, they're starting here, and this is a high day, and this is a high day, and it's overlapping, and it was just a big mess. And so one big, I think the main core component is, in one of the things we say about Aviv fellowships is that we're guardians of the Aviv.
Okay, what does that mean? Guardians of the Aviv.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool phrase, but there's a deeper meaning to it.
Okay.
Because in Scripture, I believe it's, is it Deuteronomy 16:1?
Yeah.
It talks about guarding the Aviv. And so if you dig a little bit deeper, the word Aviv actually means when something becomes Aviv, it's like in that stage where it's ripe enough to actually do something with it.
Yeah, it's actually specific to barley only. It's an agricultural term.
Yeah. And so, and if you take that back to the calendar, our calendar is based off of two components, which one is the sighting of the moon, and then the second component is if the barley's Aviv or not. And so when you insert that agricultural aspect into it, there's like this ripple effect that affects everything from that point on, and that's one of the reasons why we don't print our calendars until after we've sighted the moon and we know that the barley's Aviv, because if we get ahead of ourselves, we've kind of gotten in trouble for that before, because then everything doesn't line up and we got to retract and do all this stuff,
make no assumptions.
Which actually for me is exciting, because it's that one point in the year where we're completely dependent on the Creator and His seasons and His cycles to determine what the rest of the year is going to be like that. So that, I think, sets it apart. But the cool part about being in a Aviv fellowship is people who join or start on a Aviv fellowship or join an Aviv fellowship, these fellowships have been vetted. They know that they're going to a place where we ask certain questions before they can even become an Aviv fellowship, that are important questions like the Sabbath and, is Yeshua the Messiah? And then also, do you keep the same calendar? Because that calendar issue is the whole reason of what sets us apart. People know, I'm with a bunch of people, and I know when the feast rolls around that I can actually do it with these folks, and it'll be on the right dates. And that just brings people together, and it sets us apart. So that's kind of the deeper meaning behind Aviv. And guarding, I think what's important, and I think I wrote an article about this, was what is a guardian? And if you look in Scripture, a lot of times where you see the word keep, if you go deeper into the translation, it actually means guard or to protect. And so if you insert that word guard or to protect, and it takes on a whole new meaning if you apply it to the Sabbath. I don't just keep the Sabbath, I guard the Sabbath. Well, what does that mean? That means somebody's going to try and take it from you. The enemy's trying to steal the Sabbath from you. He's trying to steal the feasts from you.
And cause confusion with all these different calendars and arguments in the Hebrew roots world that we see.
Yeah, and that's why we're guarding is because the Father knew. He says, that's fine, I want you to keep them, I want you to observe them, but you also need to guard them. Put your guard up, because there's going to be a lot of distractions. The enemy's going to try and take it away, going to try and distract you from it. Yeah.
Now, as you mentioned, we have the astronomically and agriculturally corrected biblical Hebrew calendar. That's exactly why it's called that, is because you mentioned the agricultural aspect.
Yeah.
Now, the timing of the first fruits offering, that's right when that barley it's not quite all ripe, and it's not green, it's kind of in between.
Yeah.
And that kind of has a metaphor as to who can start an Aviv fellowship, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Because it's in that stage, and there's two components. There's the early stage where it's not quite ripe, but you can still do something with it. And I think the spiritual side of that is the big question and the big challenge a lot of people have is, I don't feel like I'm ready. I don't feel like I know enough. I haven't been to seminary. I'm not Michael Rood. I'm not Scott Laird. I'm not Matthew Hall. I don't know how to do all this stuff. And I'm not even a pastor. I've never been a pastor. But the cool part about the barley is that point when the barley becomes Aviv and the moon is sighted, and it leads up to what's the first offering that you give, which is first fruits. And so we're bringing that offering. And I think that if we use that analogy, we're bringing it, you step up to the plate that the Father has made each one of us priests and kings, and that we are under the covering of Yeshua. He's our high priest. We got problems, we go to him, okay? But we don't have to be super qualified. We don't have to, the Spirit can lead us, the Spirit can guide us. We just have to have a willing heart. Even when we're in the infant stages and we're not completely ripe, that we're not, we may not be a seasoned saint or we may not be a seasoned teacher, but you start that process and eventually you become ripe and you become, skilled and you learn things. And, start off by having a DVD time where you get together and play a teaching by Michael Rood. Go through the whole feast series, go through the spring and the fall feast. That's why we feel like the Father has put us in a platform to do this, because Michael and the ministry has created resources for people. All we are is we're just a source. We're just a resource. Just like if you were to go online and go to some thing for school and look for articles and journals to try and put together your paper. Right. We are basically the resource for people, and so we want to make that available, and anybody can do this.
It's not unlike homeschooling. A lot of parents say, well, I've never been a teacher, I've never been to school, I don't have a degree. It doesn't matter, and quite often those homeschool kids end up being the most intelligent ones in their university classes after they're done with homeschool. That should be a testament right there, and we even use that term green with the barley. When you start a new job, I'm green, I don't know anything.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's scary. I mean, when I first came to work here, I was nervous. I didn't know what was ahead of me. You don't know what the expectations are. But then you get into it and you become seasoned and you get used to those mundane routine things and you can start digging a little deeper. But there's another component to this is if you let the barley sit for too long, then it becomes stale. And so there's a period of time here. What we don't want to do is we don't want to jump the gun and get ahead of the Father. We want to wait for the barley to be aviv, but we don't want to wait too long and for it to become stale. And so we want to find that prime season where if the Father's leading and calling, that's obvious that we're in that season where he's wanting us to rise up to the occasion.
Right, and it's funny that you mentioned that Yeshua is our high priest. So and who decides whether that barley is aviv and it's ready? The high priest decides whether it's ready. So when he says you're ready, even if you feel a little green like that aviv barley. He says you're still ready, and that's when you need to move, isn't it? So when people are called by Yehovah to do this, what do they need to do? How do they start?
Well, I get a lot of people that say, I don't have a fellowship in my area, I don't have anywhere to go, and I always tell them, I said, well, the fact that you're asking is an indication the Father's leading. And so I always encourage them, I say, well, why don't you read a little bit more about what we are, who we are, and why don't you think about starting one? And so that kind of starts the conversation. So once they have a chance to learn about who we are, which we talked about in our last questions and answer, then what they need to do is they need to go to the actually join button. They click on the join button, they fill out the form, they answer all the questions. Once they submit that form, then I get that form, I'm notified, we enter them into the fellowship database, and then we have an email that goes out kind of welcoming them. And then from there, it's just they start their journey, and we've got some other resources that we plug them into, and it's awesome. And we've seen fellowships popping up all over the place. I mean,
there's hundreds around the world, literally.
Exactly. And the great part about it is we don't just accept anybody. I mean, we vet these people, and we talk to these people, and we know, because we want to know when somebody's out there searching, if they find a fellowship, that they know where they're going is a safe place to be. Okay,
well, if you want to go to a safe place and fellowship with like-minded believers, get a hold of Matthew here at avivfellowships.com. Now, if they fill out that form, they can ask questions of you as well, and you'll respond?
And they'll get an email that comes with that, and they can just respond to that email, and I will get that, and I'll communicate with them.
Wonderful. There you go. avivfellowships.com. That's where you start. Start today.
The Bible says that the love of money is the root of all evil. But you don't have to be rich to love or be concerned about money. Do you worry about losing your job? Are you concerned about having enough? Would you like to give more to ministries but just can't?
If you're an employee, then every night on the nightly news and they say the economy is bad, I'd worry a little bit. But when you're an entrepreneur, there's nothing to worry about, because entrepreneurs create the economy.
In an eye-opening series on Shabbat Night Live, syndicated radio host, entrepreneur, and best-selling author Josh Tolley reveals the truth that believers are meant to be financial leaders and how to do it.
So when people say, oh, are you preaching be rich? Not even close. What I'm preaching is stop letting money control you.
Order Faith and Finances with Josh Tolley right now on DVD, Blu-ray, or USB. You'll get both episodes as seen on Shabbat Night Live. Order Faith and Finances now by phone or online.
The last night that Yeshua was with his disciples, the Last Supper before the Passover was sacrificed, he took bread and he took wine. He said before that Abraham saw his day and rejoiced. But what does that mean? He saw his day and rejoiced. Well, it was the Melchizedek, the king of righteousness, that brought forth bread and wine to Abraham. He blessed the Most High with the blessing that Abraham taught Yitzhak, Yitzhak taught Yaakov, and is still spoken today. Whenever bread and wine is served at a Jewish table, whenever it is Sabbath, especially around the world, the bread and the wine are brought forth with this blessing. Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pari hagafen. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, the creator of the fruit of the vine. And Yeshua then said, blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. He said, this represents my body, which will be broken for you. This represents my shed blood that pays the sin penalty because of the broken covenant. As often as we do this, we do this in remembrance of him. So break the bread, share the wine, and we do this in remembrance of him until he comes.
Well, welcome back to Shabbat Night Live. If you missed our first episode with our guest today, Josh Tolley, you have to go back and watch that first episode. You will be amazed, you will be energized, and you will be inspired to be an entrepreneur. Why? Because we talked all about entrepreneurship and how anybody can do it, and every Christian, every believer should be doing it. In fact, if you're not a master, if you're not a laborer, if you're not a servant, you're a slave. Go figure that one. Now, we're going to get more into it with Josh Tolley today. Josh, welcome back to the program. Anny is, of course, with me.
Always great to be here, guys. Another Shabbat. How can we not be happy?
Indeed.
Know. Well, you left us with a lot to think about last week.
Yeah.
I mean, our minds are still racing.
And judging by the emails, I know a lot of viewers are too, so I'm glad to be back.
Oh, yeah.
We're excited to have you. So last week we figured out entrepreneurship is for every family.
Yes.
It's biblical.
Yes.
And so this week we want to talk about the meaning of life. We want to start wrapping things up.
Such easy questions.
I know.
So this is what I've discovered. Remember last week we talked briefly about, I remember sitting down across the table from a couple in their 30s, and they went to bed every night thinking, is this all my life is? Mm-hmm. Well, that kind of got me thinking, how many other people go to bed thinking that same thing? And I talked to a guy, very wealthy guy, owns the largest chain of independent bookstores in the country, and he says, Josh, I go to bed every night thinking the exact same thing. So I thought, okay, so obviously it's not an amount of money issue, it's something else. So we developed a program called Meaning of Life. How do you actually go through a system and figure out why you're here? Because so many believers, I talked to him, I have a buddy, great guy, probably watching. I've known him for 18 or 19 years now. Every time I meet him, well, I'm still waiting on the Lord to tell me what to do. I'm like, Moses didn't wait this long, dude. Like, come on. And we've just missed what we're supposed to do. So we developed a 4-step system to kind of help people figure that out.
This is an essential step to really wrapping up everything that you've taught us so far in this series.
Yeah.
So what is step number 1?
Well, step number 1 is we have to take an inventory. So whenever an auditor comes into a business, what do they start with? An inventory. What are we dealing with? Well, most of us have never inventoried our life. We just get so busy with the mundane, whether it's running kids to soccer or school or work or whatever, that we don't do an inventory. So step number 1, list everything in your life. PTA, softball, your dog, your kids, God, everything. Just put it on the list. Now, this is going to be kind of a sloppy list because you're not even going to realize how much stuff is actually in your life. Usually it takes people about 2 to 3 weeks to actually get everything. Wow. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that thing. So put everything on there. And then step 2, put that list in priority order. This is where we mess up. We love to say God's the most important, right? Oh, everybody puts God number 1. Realistically, where is he? He's probably like 20 because you said the Shema this morning and that's it. That's it. So what is the priority order? And this actually, it allows you to discover where a lot of couples start fighting, because you start to see when they make their list separately and then together, you start to see where they're different. And all of a sudden you say, oh, wait a second, no wonder we're having arguments, because this is a higher priority to me than whatever. So after you do that, you go back through and you decide on this list, what point would I die for everything above this certain point? And in the DVD series, we take, how to, but the problem is in America and Western nations, we're kind of lazy. I mean, nobody's really persecuting us right now anyway. So we don't really ask ourselves, what would we die for? Well, if you have nothing to die for, you have nothing to live for. So this kind of allows you to say, yes, these things and up, these are the things I would die for. Now, what's interesting about this, I've been doing this for 22 years now. When you look at that list and you look at that line, and I say, okay, now where do you spend most of your time and money? Most of the time, it's below the line. Then we wonder why our life has no purpose and meaning, because the things that matter most get the least amount of time, the least amount of money. Well, the Bible tells us where your treasure is, your heart is also, right? So here we have a situation where God, spouse, kids, whatever is above your line is above your line. That gets the least money and the least amount of time. No wonder, regardless of how much money we make, we go to bed every night thinking, is this all my life is? So that's kind of a real eye-opener. Most people will have some teary nights just with that list alone. Then, after that, we say, okay, everything above the list, what does it take to satisfy that? So let's say your spouse, right? Well, you're probably not spending enough time with your spouse. So time with spouse, put that on there. So now you start looking at, well, why isn't it? What's missing? Well, then the next step is a balance of time, money, and people to make the previous step actually happen. So if time with spouse is on your list, how do we actually do that? I need to make more money in less hours maybe, so I have more time to spend with my spouse. So when you go through those 4 steps, you actually get to the point at the end that tells you how much time you need to be investing into making money, how much money you need to make in order to make everything happen. And it doesn't matter if you're poor living under a bridge. Really, again, this has nothing to do with the amount. But at least we know because we did an inventory check. And you know what people you want in your life. So by the time you're done with the process, you now find your meaning. And everybody who's watching this obviously knows that God has given you instructions for life. Well, those are above the list too, above the line. But yet we ignore them for sacrifice and instead focus on what's below the line. So through this entire process, you actually start to see, hey, wait a second. Now I know what business I should be into, what people I should be involved with, and it allows you to have a very freeing feeling. We mentioned before, people make the mistake of getting involved in businesses they know or like. Well, this eliminates that problem because now you know, wait a second, if I only have 15 hours to invest in making money and I need to make 70 grand a year in order to fulfill my list, then I need to make $70,000 in 15 hours a week. If I'm thinking about a business that takes 70 hours, well, then I need to get rid of that option. It might be great for somebody else, but not for me. And because of that, I've actually given away $1 million businesses. I've given them away. And people say, well, you gave away $1 million business? Yes, because it took more time than I'm willing to put in. I don't work more than 30, 35 hours a week unless there's some special event happening. And because my time with my wife and my family, way more important than whatever amount you can throw at me.
I like that you put that into perspective for us because, I had a similar job opportunity with a company that would make millions in its lifetime, but it was a commitment of 80 to 90 hours a week,
right?
Which meant that I was living there essentially in 6 days a week. And so those are things that we don't consider because we always see the end game, the money figure. We want to know how much we are going to make, and we automatically assume that it's worth the sacrifice. But it's not always.
No. Especially once you know what you're willing to die for. That's what you're willing to sacrifice for. And what's funny, in 22 years of doing this, nobody has put their job above that line. Nobody has even put themselves above that line. So, you know, it's like, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these other things will be added unto you. Well, this is a real practical way to see that and visualize that, because God is a godly principle, marriage is a godly principle, family is a godly principle. Seek ye first the kingdom principles, kingdom of God, and everything else will be added unto you. So you don't have to worry about sacrificing a family for money.
Well, it's that age-old concept of, if you met a 95-year-old person and you want to ask them the wisdom of life and what do you wish you did more in your life, never once is it ever a job.
Right, not one time.
Yeah.
I wish I worked more.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the number one reason, or number one thing that people comment on, is that's one thing that they don't desire, is to work more at the end of their life. If anything, they want more time back.
Yeah.
From working, and from even just from time that we spend on the internet, just piddling around, and our phones are just...
You know, and speaking of that 95-year-old person, I mean, if we talk about this when we're, you know, in our 30s and 40s here at this table, but what if the person who says, you know what, I finally realized that Josh is right, I want to change my life, but I'm 65, is it too late?
It is never too late. I had a 94-year-old World War II vet who literally stormed the beaches of Normandy come up to me last, I think Shavuot, some feast day. He came up to me and said, Josh, I read your book. I've seen you speak 3 times. I just want you to know I started my business. And he was 94 years old. And to be honest, I'm thinking, we got to hurry up here, right? But he said, I've never felt younger. I've never felt more empowered. I'm excited today at 94 like I was at 15, where I thought, wow, finally, there's potential ahead of me. And to be 95 or 94, looking at the doorway, right? And to still think I can still make the most out of this. And that's what the Bible teaches us from front to back. It teaches us no matter how late, it's not how the story starts, it's how the story ends. And he said, man, even if I just start it and I die the next day, I'm going to have that satisfaction of at least I did it. I didn't die thinking, man, what if I let go of the rope? What if I just would have taken that chance? And that's something that it doesn't matter how old you are.
No, that's beautiful. And it doesn't matter how young you are. I know that you have a son that's very entrepreneur-minded.
Oh, yeah. He amazes me, because I just think, how are you doing this? He knows what the hottest toys are, and he ends up getting them for his friends and creating a little business out of it.
Absolutely. Children, I was talking about this before, children are born to be entrepreneurs. We're the ones that teach them not to be. It's just a God-given talent and skill set that He's put in us, and we drive it out of our children.
And speaking of kids, it's fun, isn't it? I mean, you probably look at what you do and you go, this is fun. You know, I don't even want to stop when I'm 94.
Yeah.
And because we see so often people work all their lives till they're 65, 70, or whatever the case may be, and then they quit essentially what they love to do, and they retire, and they just go downhill, they're depressed, they don't know what to do with themselves, and life doesn't have any meaning anymore.
No, because we got our meaning not from God, but from our job. That's why when you ask somebody, what do you do? If they tell you what they do for money, you automatically know some priorities are out of whack here. Because that's what we say we do. Well, then your identity gets taken away from you, and you are the rich young ruler in the Bible. Now, this is what's interesting. When we see the rich young ruler example, Yeshua doesn't say, oh, well, you know, let's start with giving up money. He goes through the checklist first. Did you do everything you're supposed to do? Yep, I did everything I was supposed to do. This is why. Because your identity is in your wealth. That's what he's talking about. You're finding your identity in the money. Not that money's bad. He didn't go after anybody else for this. He didn't walk up to a rich person's house and knock on the door. Why is that not in the Bible? So it was this guy who found his identity in the wealth that Jesus goes after. Well, think about it. We're doing the same thing with our job. When we say, what do you do? Most believers do not say, I pick up my cross daily and follow after Him. Ooh, that's supposed to be our identity. Most of us instead say what we do for a job, and then we tell ourselves, money's not important, money's not the most important thing, it doesn't rule me, I'm not a servant to you. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Actions speak louder than words. I don't care how you spin it or twist it, actions speak louder than words. Know them by their fruit. And if we ask people what you do, and your first response is what you do for money, I don't care what other argument you have after that.
You know, and it's something that I practice here with my staff on a daily basis. And we get together at least once a month and conversate. But the very first thing that I ask them when they start working for a Rood Awakening is, who are you? And you can't name your profession or what you do as your response.
Yeah.
And it's always eye-opening. And it takes you back, because then you really have to consider, who am I? Who am I outside of work? Because work does consume so much of our lives.
It does.
And we live in a society now where our identities are exactly that, our professions, unfortunately.
It is, and that's why we have like the destruction of the family and destruction of marriage, because we're finding our identity outside the one that created us, and that leads to a systemic problem in the home.
Speaking of which, you mentioned that as one of, when we were planning to what we were going to speak about on this program, you mentioned that divorce is a huge problem as it relates to money.
Yeah.
Money is I mean, I think that's probably no secret that money is the leading cause of arguments between spouses. But how do you see this problem?
So here in America, in the Western world as a whole, we spend less and less time together as a family. When I wrote the book, it was 42 minutes. Now it's 34 minutes. When you take out time with kids, that's only 19 minutes with husband and wife. 19 minutes a day. That's it. That's the average quality time that couples have. Well, if you ask any pastor, therapist, counselor, marriage getaway, they're going to tell you that the reasons for divorce are communication, sex, money, and infidelity. Well, think about it. How are you supposed to have good communication in 19 minutes? So this generation, whether you're 60 or 16, this generation needs a bunch of books, and not that the books are bad, but we need books like 5 Love Languages, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, How to Communicate with Your Spouse, all that sort of stuff, because we needed a total stranger who didn't mean me or my spouse, how to tell me how the person I sleep next to communicates. Well, why did other generations not need this? Why did grandma not need this? Why did all the way back to Adam and Eve not need this? Because they spent time together. Well, now we spend 19 minutes together, the kids grow up moving out, and then we look at our spouse and say, well, I don't feel like I know you anymore. You don't know them. In the 18 years that you were together, you spent less than 3 weeks of quality time together outside of vacation. So how would you expect to be building a life together?
You know, that's interesting you mentioned that, because even in a vacation, you know, we've got kids and they were all over the place. And,
sure.
And you get together for a vacation. And it's ironic that when you get together to spend quality time together, the arguments start, because you don't know what that person is about.
Yes. Now you realize, holy cow, I'm living with a stranger.
Yep.
And now on vacation, you have to deal with the stranger and then somehow put it all together in the 5 or 7 days you have. So that's communication. But next on the list, and I know there might be children watching, well, let's just say sex, ... 19 minutes? Okay, number 3.
Okay.
I'm just saying, right?
No, I mean, that's a good point.
Well, it is, because in those wonderful 19 minutes you have, you're supposed to deal with who's going to pick up the kids from soccer, did you pay the rent bill, and okay, let's be intimate. What?
Yep.
Yeah.
So then number 3 on the list is money. It's never, oh man, I'm divorcing you because you keep leaving hundreds all over the counter. That's not the argument. So when your pastor says communication, sex, and money, it's lack of money that's causing an argument, but we don't talk about that in church. And then infidelity. Infidelity, I thought, you know what, that was on you. The top 3 might be employment because you're only spending 19 minutes with your spouse, but infidelity, that's probably a heart or spiritual issue, which in many cases probably is. But check this out. When I was doing research for the Quit Your Job or Die book,
it's in this book. You talk about the subject.
It's like, think about it. If a husband and a wife get married, they love each other and lovey-dovey. They come back from the honeymoon. She puts on her pretty clothes, puts on her pretty makeup, goes to work, usually with or for a man. She will see that man make decisions, be decisive, chase a dream. She will help him do it, what the Bible calls a helpmeet. Huh, that's weird. Anyway, so then where's the number 1 place women have an affair? Work. Well, I thought the Bible said flee temptation. Anyway, so then the husband puts on his nice clothes, goes off to work for 40 or 50 hours, where a woman is seeing him make decisions, being decisive, helping him chase a dream or a goal. Where's the number 1 place a man has an affair? Work. So you're telling me God wants you in the number 1 place for temptation? Good luck with that. But beyond that, we then come home and in those wonderful 19 minutes, we dump on each other. So you start saying, well, you don't help around the house. Well, you keep nagging me. You're not my mother, right? We do that. What we're really saying is, why can't you be like the woman or the man I spend 50 hours a week with to you? And then we wonder why we have the divorce rate we have. You can link that to employment. And I was on a marriage panel, and they had 7 Christian couples. Many would be known if we said their names, right? So there's me and my wife and then 6 others. And they're, well, what's the key to successful marriage? And they go down the line and everybody's answering questions. And we're like a half hour into this panel discussion. I said, wait a second, wait. Notice how every couple up here is an entrepreneur. That was the one common denominator that nobody bothered to mention. So we have to make those connections and realize when we engage in employment long term. Now, if your husband just died, you have to become a waitress part-time to feed the kids. Awesome, do it. I'm not saying it's evil. I'm talking about the mentality, though. When we're like, yes, I'm going to be an employee for 50, 60 years, and then you expect your kids to know you and your wife or husband to stay married to you? Why? God didn't prescribe that. He said, I'm going to put you two together to become one. Not, I'm going to put you together for 19 minutes, you go be one with somebody else, and now divorce is something I hate. Come on.
You know, you look at this situation, and then you think of the folks who say, well, you should never work with your spouse. It'll just cause problems.
Sure.
It's the complete opposite. Chase the dream with your spouse. Is that right?
Yes. The only people who say this are the ones that are trying to do it 25 years into the marriage. If they would have started that way, they would have been like grafted in. It's weird. I heard that someplace in a big book too, right? They become grafted into each other where they become one and they grow towards a dream. The problem we have is if you're doing something for 20 years and your wife is doing something for 20 years and then you try to shift that, it's like breaking an old vine. Now to get that back together, you're going to need the Holy Spirit to kind of soften that up. Otherwise, you're just busting some brittle vine. But you're right. If we would have built the marriage on that, which is why when I talk to young couples who are thinking about getting married, I ask them, what's the purpose of the marriage? Like, what are you actually trying to accomplish? Not, well, they're sexy and I'm attracted to them and I love them. Where is that? Right? When God gave Rachel to Isaac, Isaac or Jacob? I'm having a brain, but anyway, when Rachel comes into the story, it wasn't, okay, let's see if he's attracted to her. All right, did they meet on Tinder? It was, look, there's a purpose for this marriage. Let's serve the purpose. And we don't do that anymore because we don't even know what our purpose is, let alone how to identify it in a spouse and move forward.
It's all about support at the end of the day, I think. I'm not at the shop with my husband 40 hours a week. He started that company before we got married, so it was inherited essentially into our marriage. But I'm still there every step of the way when he's making decisions and when he's going through even day-to-day stuff. I mean, he calls me on a regular basis. So it's about support.
Yeah.
And like you said, because otherwise somebody will step in.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and not saying that it happens 100% of the time because everybody's different, but it leaves an open door.
It does, which we're not supposed to do. When the Bible says flee temptation, we can't say, well, I want to be where temptation is the strongest for 40 hours for 50 years. You might as well just say, hey, I work at a strip club and you cheated on me, what? I mean, we have to have a level of duh here. And I think that's what happens a lot is we don't want to live up to that. We don't want to say, wait a second, am I letting the fox in the henhouse? And that's not an excuse to sin. That's not to say you should do it. But let's just be honest. That's why God said flee it. That's why Joseph, boom, I'm out of here, man. I'm not saying, well, I shouldn't do this, ma'am. No, he runs out the window, gone. And that's how we have to be. We don't purposely put ourselves in that situation on purpose just because of money, and then we say money's not important. And we start to look like a hypocrite at that point.
Well, speaking of the subject of money, which has been the entire topic of discussion today, I'm curious on one question, and that is, how does money relate to ministries? And I know that this is something that we wanted to discuss a little bit later, but I'm at a point now where I'm curious to know, what about ministries and money in particular? Because that's something that you keep on bringing up, is our pastors, our leaders, our church leaders, our elders. So what is their interpretation, and then what is actually biblical?
Well, it's interesting. You know, we have a lot of pastors out there who are going to say things like, oh, money's not important, yet ask for it. My opinion is that no church should have the audacity to ask for money or even accept it if they're not going to biblically teach their people how to make it. You can't tell me that Scripture is for all instruction, except what I do for 40 hours a week. So we have to get that first. But then we have to get past this idea that somehow money is evil. And we see this all the time in media. They're like, oh, well, you should give that away for free because you're a Christian. Stop it. Nothing is free. The Bible even says that a laborer is worth his wages, right? So, I mean, think about it. When we have people say, well, I can't believe you charge for that. What? Do you go to work for free? Well, no, that's different. Why is that different? Well, because it's not the Word of God. We're not charging for the Word of God. The Word of God is free. You guys are a great example of that. A lot of stuff you do is free. You can just Google you guys and see hours and hours and hours of free stuff. But it actually costs money to make an actual DVD. It costs money to pay the wonderful crew that's standing 20 feet to our right. So that takes money. And what we say as believers, when we say to a ministry, well, how dare you charge? What you're really saying is, I want to be irresponsible, immature, just gimme, gimme, gimme. Well, God doesn't do that. God says you have to do something too. That's why it's a covenant. That's why we're walking together. Equally yoked is still yoked. The other ox doesn't do it for you and you just get to come along and eat the apple at the end. You have to do it together. And I'm so sick and tired of ministries that are media driven, being ridiculed for this. This is not church. This is a ministry that provides a product or service for you to glean from and learn from. And if they need to charge something in order to continue, good. Church is church. And I think what happens a lot of times is a lot of viewers, and I'm not talking about your viewers necessarily, but it's ministry-wide, right? A lot of viewers don't actually want to go meet their neighbors. They don't want to go live the gospel. They don't want to spread and evangelize. They want to count on a ministry to do it and then get mad at the ministry for charging to keep the door open, which actually means out of the two people in the equation, the one that's most in hot water is the one complaining.
We do receive comments like that on a regular basis, and we understand. I mean, we are raised in a very entitled society, culture, really, where we do expect a lot of things for free. And it's challenging for us because, you know, we still have to live, we still have to eat. You know, the lights are still on, and the landlord's not going to let that fly without it getting billed. And I know that most of our partners understand that, and for that we appreciate you because you do stand with us. But in the grand scheme of things, if we had, and I tell this to people all the time, we have over 1 million people that watch Shabbat Night Live on a almost, well, I would say a little over $1 million on almost a quarterly basis. If they just donated $1, we would never have to ask for money again. If every person committed to just $1 every time they watch this program, we would never have to ask for any donations because it would be taken care of. But that is the one principle that, you know, most people in the Hebrew Roots community are so excited about everything else but tithing.
Yes.
Or giving.
Or giving.
And even yesterday, I was at the grocery store doing grocery shopping, and a lady came out and she said, which I think, I'm not sure if it was true or not, but she had asked for money. She was standing next to my car and she said, hey, I need money. I lost my wallet. I need to get home. I have absolutely nothing with me. And she lived in Asheville, which is a couple of hours away. And, you know, without thinking, I just pulled out my wallet and I gave her money. And so on the way home, I was thinking to myself, she was probably lying. And it was foolish of me to give it. And of course, that was the natural.
Sure.
That was the flesh. Because the Spirit was saying, you know, what you do with that money is between me and you, and what she does with that money is between her and I. And that's not my business. It's not my mandate. My mandate's to give, and to give without question, as the Scripture says. Now, what she does with that is between her and God.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So,
well, we're going to come back and talk more about money. In fact, we're going to talk about the proper understanding of money for the family and how the family understands money. So we're going to come back to that in just a few seconds here. But we're going to give you 2 minutes to just think about what you've heard today, and we appreciate your support. We're going to thank you in advance. We know that if you appreciate this program, you will support it for all the things we've been talking about here this morning. So, or today rather. It's Shabbat Night Live. It's not the morning, it's the evening. So it's been a long day. Anyway, we're going to leave you with 2 minutes to support this ministry. We thank you in advance, and we'll see you in a little bit. and thank you for supporting Shabbat Night Live. You know, we were just talking about, before the break, we talked about divorce and money and how that all happens. And then we started talking about the family and the proper understanding of money. I know, Annie, you wanted to ask Josh a specific question about that.
Yes. I just want to know how this money and the understanding of money shapes the dynamic of a family. Because I know we talked about it with the potential of divorce within a family, but the children are also affected. They see their dad or mom how often? How many hours?
Well,
how many
out of
minutes?
that 34 minutes minus 19, so less than 20. You know, I mean, it's terrible. And then if you have multiple kids, and this is why parents don't even know the teacher's name at school. They don't know what their kids are learning, you know, because they're so out of it. And I get it. In their heart, they're saying, I'm working hard for my kids, which might be true. But then let's change it. Let's work smart so you can actually see your children. And the effect it has on kids is monumental. It's part of the reason why we have an entire generation right now that has no identity. So they start making up fluid identities, whether it's gender or whatever, race, like we're trans everything, because we have no identity and we've not been taught an identity. So when you look at homes that have two parents working, you have more teen drug use, you have more teen pregnancy, you have more runaways, and then they hate everything that the parents did. So then you have a generation that feels entitled. As soon as they get a job, well, I want a raise, I want a promotion, I don't want to work like my parents did. Where are we right now? We're in that exact same thing. And employment is to blame. Absolutely. But we are too as parents because we do some terrible things. We say to our kid, well, okay, I'm just going to give you an allowance. You're teaching them entitlement. Well, somehow dad got paid, so I get paid, right? Or you teach them, oh, two little kids, you have to share. Wait a second. So you as an outside party are going to say you have too much, so let me take from the one who has too much as an outside party and give to one who doesn't have?
And that's why people don't understand economics now.
They don't. Or they vote for candidates who say the same thing. Oh, well, they have too much, so let me as an outside party take from them and give to those who don't. And not that sharing is bad, but we're supposed to not be forced to do it. We're supposed to give out of the abundance of our heart. We should be moved by the Spirit to give. And when you teach a kid to share, you're actually teaching them, don't be moved by the Spirit, have an outside third-party entity, parent, government, whatever, take from those who have and give to those who don't have. So we are really damaging our children. And then if we look at how we raise them, even things like timeouts for an amount of time, you're teaching them time served equals reward. Instead, we have in our classes, we teach a process of family dollars. And kids have to earn family dollars in order to get out of being punished. Now you're raising them in the way they should go. Right? That's the point, kind of like the Bible tells us. So now you're raising them in the way they should go as opposed to punished, time served, freedom afterwards. And even when they make money, what we teach our attendees to our classes or our online stuff is we teach people when you're raising children, make them earn the money through entrepreneurship. When they're 6 or 7, however old they are, when they start understanding what money is, make them not get an allowance, not get a job, make them start a business. And if you took that kid from 6 to 18, that's 12 years. Do not let them run a business longer than 6 months. So now in those 12 years of growing up, they've started 24 businesses. Well, I could take that kid, give him $50, drop him off in Singapore, come back a year later, he'll be middle class because he understands how economies work, how money works, how entrepreneurship works, and he is raised in the way that he should go and he shall not depart. And I get that that has to do with the totality of the word. Got it. Teach them the rest too, but this is part of it because the scriptures for all instruction. And we're not doing that with our children. So instead, our children are what psychologists are calling cocooning. We're becoming antisocial. We're becoming entitled. We're becoming somebody who prays to government for jobs, for food, for whatever. And it's making us dependents as opposed to people who fear the Lord and move forward in faith.
No more capitalism. That's the end of capitalism. And that's what this, we're not a democracy or a republic. We're a capitalistic country where we believe in capitalism. We believe in building businesses, starting businesses, and not socialism. So.
Free enterprise that's governed by a republic that's elected democratically. But it's the free enterprise that started it. When you think about Benjamin Franklin, right? The dude was already a billionaire if you adjust for inflation. So what was he willing to risk? They weren't doing it for money. They weren't doing it for a job. They already had all these things. They risked it, not even for freedom of religion. They already had that too. Because the letter from the Danbury Baptist to Thomas Jefferson said, hey, if you boys, again, I'm paraphrasing, if you boys down there in Philadelphia are starting this government, do we still have a separation of church and state? Wait a second. So they already had freedom of religion? Well, they fought over tax, Josh. No, they didn't. Personal income tax didn't exist until 1913. The only thing they taxed was entrepreneurship. So if you really want to get to the root of it, they fought for entrepreneurship, governed by a republic, elected democratically. So that's where we are, but we don't teach that even in school.
No, we don't. And, you know, a lot of people ask me if I want to have children, which as of right now, my husband and I say no, but it's because I understand the realistic expectation, and I don't want to spend 24 minutes. How much was it? 12 minutes with my child?
Yeah, under 20, yeah.
Because I love to work. And so if I want to go to work, I don't want to drop off the kid, you know, wake him up at 6, drop him off at 7 after getting ready, and then picking him up at 7 p.m. at night, and then putting him in bed at 8. That's not the kind of life that I want for a child. And I realize that. But there's so many people that are not considering just the impact that they're going to have on the future generation.
Right, and they drop them off at daycare, which costs about $10 an hour, by the way, because if it's $400 a week, that's $10 an hour. So you're spending $10 an hour that you're making on daycare, having somebody else raise your children. And then sometimes Christians throw out, well, they had servants in the Bible. Abraham had other people helping his raise his kids. Yeah, that were in his household. So they were teaching that kid what Abraham taught to that kid, and Abraham was involved because Abraham was an entrepreneur. So when the kid was old enough to walk, out in the field you go with dad, and I'm going to teach you how to be a shepherd, or whatever, throughout history, down to this last generation. It's only been in the last 100 years that we've gotten this employment mindset, daycares, drop off kids, and have absentee parents, and then we wonder why they're not raised in the way they should go. Newsflash, I don't care how biblical you are, if you're raising your kids 20 minutes a day to observe God, but the daycare lady, who you only chose because it was the best rate in town, right? She's raising them to be anti-God. Guess who wins?
That's right. They spend more time there.
Yeah.
It's their influence. Their circle of influence, especially if they're spending so little time with their parents.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, so what do we do with this? We've seen all this, the problem. Where does the solution start?
Well, the solution starts with taking that inventory and finding your meaning of life. You have to understand why you're even doing it and what you're doing. We don't even ask ourselves why anymore. That's, again, something we drill out of children. When they're like that big, they ask why until we get nauseated by it, right? Why? We say, stop asking why. Well, we should ask why. Why are you going to work? Why are you trying to start a business? And then what? What are you actually after? What's the goal? Not just start a business, go. There has to be a goal. Paul says run the race to win it. Well, if you don't know where you're heading, how can you win? So you have to understand, what am I actually after? And then, just like when you're in school, the easiest way to do a maze is backwards. Start with the end goal, work backwards, and revealing what business you should be in is actually pretty easy. We do take people through the process. We've been doing it for over 20 years, so it's really simple. There's even a video of me up on YouTube where I took some people out in a rental car, pulled over on the side of the road and said, okay, pretend you're homeless, and by tonight, don't be. And by the time we got to lunch, we started 4 businesses and made over 40 grand. So anybody can be an entrepreneur. It's just we're not taught to be.
No.
So we're taught to either be an employee or a small business owner, and neither one of those things are entrepreneurs. So what we do is we actually teach that. But anybody can do it. You can start right now. But here's some keys. 1, don't risk anything. Entrepreneurship is not supposed to be risky. This shouldn't be well, I tried it once and lost the house. That's not how it's supposed to go. If you're starting your first business correctly, there's no capital risk, there's no inventory risk. It just doesn't make sense, and will it make a profit? Once it makes a profit, which is not an evil word, once it makes a profit, you can then use that revenue to build yet another bigger business. Anybody can start a business today.
Makes me want to start a business right now.
Not on Shabbat.
No, exactly. You're right. Not on Shabbat, tomorrow. No, but these are all good concepts for us to learn at any age, and definitely instill in children. And they're practical, too. Because we think, we often see the big business down the street, and we wish and we hope and we desire it, but we don't know where to begin or the first steps. And I mean, for all of us, we think that it's a risk. You know, that you have to risk money, you have to risk time, you have to, risk
Well, give
careers.
Exactly. Well, give us an example. You say starting the maze at the end and going back to the beginning. So
Yeah.
without
We
using a whole lot of capital. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we can use my example.
Okay.
I'd like my end game to be a vineyard.
Oh, the vineyard example.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So when we were talking about
Yeah.
this idea of a vineyard, most people would say, well, I got to buy land, which is going to take debt, and then I'm going to have to plant grapes, and then I have to wait for the grapes to grow and mature, then I have to squish all the grapes, turn them into wine, then try to sell the product, right? This is the wrong way to go about doing this.
Which is what I was doing.
But it's the wrong way to go
Sign
about
the
doing
deed
it.
yet, I hope. No, okay, good.
Because what we do at that point is we have all this risk, where instead what you could do is you could start a brand, which is really what a business is anyway. The brand is far more important than what product you make or service you provide, but that's a whole nother show. But you start with the brand. You have that wine that you want to put under that brand private labeled. You have it made by another winery, but put in your bottle with your name, and then you go out and market that product. Believe it or not, most products people buy are actually private labeled products. They're not manufactured by the company you think it is. Whether it's yogurt or it's suntan lotion or shaving blades, they're usually all made by somebody else. Just pick up your product, turn it over. Does it say manufactured for or distributed by? If it does, then they didn't make it. So you start that way. Now you could start your wine business with maybe a $200 investment because you're going to need to get legal, cut through the red tape, and apply for your license. But then you start. Now there's actually ways around that where you can get sponsorship, but again, that's a long... But now you get out there and you start selling your product. You get it in stores. Now let's say you make $100,000 profit. Well, now you have some money to buy land debt-free. So now while all the other vineyards around you have to keep their prices high in order to pay for the loan on the land, you can drop your prices, now gobble up their market share because they can't drop theirs, and now you grew even faster. So those abilities to say, well, let's work backwards. How do I get to the goal, not make the goal the process itself? So there is a great example. I had another guy come to me, and I put him in the book. I had another guy come to me and say, Josh, I want to start a business, but I have no money. And he was, well, he wanted a bed and breakfast. We used him last Shabbat as an example. But he was really good at drawing. And I said, well, why don't you draw caricatures of tourists up in Seattle? He says, well, I don't even have money for that. I said, not a problem. We went to an Italian restaurant. I told the Italian restaurant, if you sponsor the kid, because he was a young guy, if you sponsor the young guy, give him $500 to get started, get his vendor permit, his equipment to do his art, he will hand out a coupon for your restaurant with every caricature he draws. Well, if you've ever been in business, advertising that way, for somebody to actually hands-on promote your business for $500, cheap. So the Italian restaurant's like, duh. They gave him the $500. Last time I talked to him, he works 4 days a week, makes decent money, and it's a great stepping stone to get that bed and breakfast that he's always wanted. So that is how you can get started with whatever you have. But let's even say, well, Josh, I'm an invalid in bed and I'm 92 years old. I can't do that. Great. Then you give the kid the $500 and say, I'll take 20%.
That's smart. We have a lot of friends that actually have done that, that have invested, and then they receive essentially what's interest on their loan or...
Yeah, or a percentage of the business. And you might say, well, he could go out of business, I could lose my $500. Yeah, you could, but that's why you don't risk anything you're not willing to lose. You know, let's say it's $100, but we have to get real here at some point too. We have to stop excusing our poverty.
Yes.
We have to stop saying, well, I have 7 roommates and a 20-year-old car. I don't need money. That's not how this is supposed to go. This is not supposed to be you're living with 20 other people in a shack and driving a 20-year-old car. How this is supposed to go is to say, okay, well, you know what? I do have $100 I could put into something. Because goodness gracious, even a date, I know fewer people are getting married, but even a date should cost you $100. So for the price of 5 dates, you can get invested in a business?
At least a good date.
At least a good date. Yes.
Got to mention that.
Yes. But no, my point is it's available to anybody.
And it's realistic. It's a realistic figure. It's, you know, you're not saying go invest $500,000, go invest $50,000. You're using practical numbers that most of us can save in a reasonable amount of time.
Right, so you don't need to go and invest $1 million in that McDonald's franchise. You can just start a much simpler and more affordable way.
And that's just 2 examples in the few minutes we have. And the overall concept that I want people to get is even if you don't even have the $500, then find the Italian restaurant for the kid and say, I still get a cut. So there's ways around it if you have $0 Homeless people we've helped start businesses. So the excuse really isn't there.
And you know, even businesses that are already a success use this model, like using your wine, for example. Trader Joe's. I love Trader Joe's, and I'm going to mention them because I like the store. And they have a great wine. They have a great wine that's $5, organic. An organic wine for $5. They also have some of the greatest peanut butter replacements, all this, and they have different products all the time because that's what they're doing. They're not doing it themselves.
Right.
They are simply
private
labeling it,
yep.
and bringing it in for a little while, limited time, make lots of sales off it, push it aside, do the next hot thing.
Yep, exactly. And we need to start thinking like that. We need to be creative because it's God that gives us the creativity.
Mm-hmm.
God is the giver of dreams. God is the creator. We give way too much credit to Hasatan, who's saying, well, he made it. No, stop it. You lean on your creator and the gifts he's given you.
Yes, agreed. Well, before we go, and I hate that honestly, this is your last time with us because I would love to talk about the subject
Last
so
time,
much more.
this time. I'll be back someday.
You'll be back, yes. Yeah. No, but I'd love to be able to discuss this topic even further in the future because it is such an important topic in our lives. It's one that we want to avoid as much as possible, but yet it's so important to us because we all need money to live and hopefully live well. But I wanted to bring up a couple of things that you're doing new in 2018.
Yes.
One is the Purple Monkey University.
Yes.
You have a new course,
yes.
which is actually where we borrowed a lot of this material from. It's a 52-episode course. Is that correct?
Yep.
So one per week for a year? Is that how you do it?
One per week for a year, and
Okay.
there's a few different ways people can get involved with it. So what we've noticed is Purple Monkey Garage, which is the parent company, now has 10 offices and locations across the country because demand for this sort of training and teaching, whether somebody hasn't started a business or whether they have a business and it's not doing what they need it to do, we've started Purple Monkey Garage and it's grown coast to coast. And thankfully, even from my last appearance on Shabbat Night Live.
Good.
But not everybody can get there. Some people are living in Nowheresville. So they said, hey, can we at least learn? So we created Purple Monkey University. And that is once per week, you get a lesson and a homework assignment, and we've had people take that course. And even since last Passover, they're making six-figure incomes based on what they've been learning through the course.
Sign me up.
And then people have asked, well, can I get it all at once? You know, I don't want to wait the 52 weeks, I want it now, instant gratification generation, right? Well, he said, yes, you can, absolutely. So we've made it all available online. You can buy it all at once. It's only $12.50 an episode. So when people are like, oh, this is expensive, go take any college class for $12.50 a session. Impossible.
I think it's a worth it investment for the outcome.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And then if you start a business, you can actually write it off. But now we've released the DVD set. So now you can get the entire DVD set. And sure, it is an investment. I get that. And it's not for everybody. Fine. Go get the weekly one. That's good too. But you can get the DVD set and the 52 assignment workbook right now, and you can take that home and start doing it instantly.
So you could network style or Netflix style binge watch it.
That's right. That's right. Netflix and succeed.
Well, and I just want to go through some of these, like why most businesses fail. History of money, which is what we talked on.
Yeah.
The impact on society. Getting out of debt is never enough, which is ironic that you say that because everybody says get out of debt. That's the solution.
Oh, no, no, no. If we don't change how we make money, getting out of debt just puts us back in debt 10 years later.
Yeah.
I go to so many churches, not to name names, but I speak at so many churches who have me come in to fix a problem because 10 or 15 years ago, they did this popular get out of debt program, didn't change how people made money, so now they're 10 to 15 years older, back in debt, and now you can't eat the beans and rice and you can't sell the jet ski.
Well, it's not you're not changing habits when you just get out of debt.
Right.
Which is what my husband and I are learning.
Right.
Is you have to change the entire habits before anything changes. So then you have, of course, the meaning of life, which is something that we discussed briefly here. Who is your competition, your exit plan, fear and pride, just leadership, female advantage, branding, advertising, SEO, and I can tell you how important that is for a business. Which is essentially what I do here is the SEO and the marketing, both of us.
Yeah, well, SEO, for those who don't know, is search engine optimization, how people find you on the internet, which is really important for Michael Rood's ministry.
And something that we don't address properly, I guarantee it. So many people are thinking something incorrectly about it. So we address those issues too.
Well, now I'm curious.
Well, get the course. But I mean, and really, I mean, you mentioned meaning of life. We've actually pulled that out. That has become so powerful that we've pulled that out, and it's a few episodes, and we've actually made that a standalone product as well.
I'm glad to hear that. And how many times do we sit there and think about what our life is and what it should be and where our priorities are and, you know, what we're willing to sacrifice ourselves for, because we don't think about it. But we only have one life, one opportunity at this.
Right.
And we won't have this opportunity again. We have to do it correctly. And it's such an important subject matter that gets forgotten.
It is, and we love to excuse it away. Like, well, Joseph was, you know, in Egypt for years before he became second in command, and maybe that's just me. Maybe it is just you. But Joseph didn't have a choice. We go to work every day with a choice. So we can't use all these biblical examples and say, well, Daniel too, he didn't have a choice either. We have a choice. We live in the freest country, at least for now. So we can't use these biblical examples and say, well, that's what he's doing with me. It might be great, that's you, but we're talking to, like you said, 1 million+ people. Most people are choosing to be in the situation they're in. They just don't realize it.
They're comfortable.
Yeah.
And I mean, I see that a lot with individuals that want change, but don't actually pursue change.
Right.
Because they get comfortable. They're comfortable in their job, in their pay, in their home life, and their schedule, and their travel. And knowing that change is coming oftentimes just feels anxious.
You know, the one thing we wanted to touch on before we go is something ironic to the subject of talking about money on basically a Bible-based show, and that is, how does this whole thinking lead to Shabbat observance? I was really intrigued when you mentioned that. Tell me how this works.
I love this topic because it even surprised me. So me and my wife speak at a lot of regular Christian conferences, right? Not Shabbat, not Torah observant, just Christian conferences with, again, people most people recognize. And we go to these conferences that are Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Well, Friday and Saturday, we have a sheet over our table and it says, closed for Shabbat. And the first time we went, these people come up and they're like, I thought that was done away with, and I have the $100 challenge. Prove to me where it's done away with, I'll give you $100. And they say, well, I can't prove it, but if that's still true, then why aren't the other people doing it? So I said, great question, go ask them. So all of a sudden you have these famous pastors who are now put on the spot saying, well, pastor, show me where it changed. Okay. So what we've noticed is not only within Christendom is this leading as an example, but we're seeing it other places too. When I do most of my stuff, like I said before, unlike some of the great gifts you've had, I'm not a theologian. I'm not pretending to be a theologian. If I'm wrong, correct me, got it. But I am a business person who is a believer. So when I go to a business conference that's just for the general public, I will do a 2-day business seminar, and then at the end, they'll say, well, Josh, tell me about God.
Wow.
And it surprised me. I'm like, what? And it turns into, yeah, you understand the earthly, so tell me about the heavenly. And I've had clients that are, you know, I'll meet them and we'll sit down and I'll say, well, I don't work on the Sabbath. I'm sorry, I can't do this event. And they'll, well, what is that? And then they start asking me, and I don't make anybody do it because I think it's between them anyway. But we have had so many clients that say, well, Josh, I think I'm going to shut down my store on the Sabbath. How do you think that's going to go? And then they start freaking out because in America, Saturday's the day if you're in retail especially. And we'll see them go through the process and the sales will dip and they'll be like, Josh, should I still do it? And I said, look, that's between you and him. I think it says you're supposed to do it. It says remember. But I think God's saying, did you really mean it? If it cost you everything, would you still observe my instructions? And it has been amazing to see these clients come in, whether they're secular or Christian, and all of a sudden they start observing the Sabbath, start observing dietary laws, and their businesses thrive. It's almost exactly like God said it would be. And then they get this stronger faith and they start telling people. And it's amazing how many people have come to the Sabbath through business instruction. I absolutely love it. And they come, more importantly, to the Word itself. And of course, the Word made flesh, which is the Messiah.
You know, that's so, I saw that in Toronto. When I went to Toronto about 8 years ago, a friend of mine, he lived in this section of Toronto called Thornhill. And it's all Jewish. So there's about 200,000 Jewish people living there. Even the 7-Eleven closes on Shabbat.
Really?
Yeah, even the 7-Eleven, I kid you not. And it is the nicest, most successful, most beautifully decorated area in all of Toronto. And it's because they observe the Sabbath and they're true to Jehovah.
Goshen was the same way. When they first got there, right, before they were turned into slaves and they forgot the law and forgot the instructions, what happened? He said they're multiplying too fast, their herds, their people, it's just booming, and there is reward. And not that you should do it for a reward, but he says there is blessing in keeping my instruction, right? So when you keep the instruction, there is a blessing. Other people notice, and then they say, what is it that makes you different? And that is something that has been such a blessing in business that leads to so many people coming to the Messiah.
We're supposed to be different. We're supposed to, again, be leaders and business owners and the head and not the tail.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to be in debt. We're supposed to be more than capable of taking care of our own.
Indeed.
And that's the promises that, the Bible tells us that we can live in. But again, yet it's that change.
Right.
That's scary.
Well, and it's not scary because Jehovah is there to take us all the way, which I think that's one thing I've learned from you today, Josh. There is no fear in jumping into this because he's already got something reserved for you. And if Josh has charged you up like he's charged us up here, I encourage you to get Josh's material. Josh, where can people find all your stuff?
Please.
They can find my show, JoshTolley.com.
Okay.
But they can also go to Purple Monkey Garage. From there, they can link over to Purple Monkey University. They can be part of what's going on. If they have a business now that needs to succeed, bring it on into the garage. We're not coaches and consultants. We're actually more than that. We roll up our sleeves and actually make it happen. So they can find out more there.
And these are exceptional books. Again, just very practical, easy to read. You have an awesome sense of humor.
Thank you so much.
So it makes it fun. But I love these books. And again, this is a subject matter that is near and dear to my heart because too many of us are suffering.
Yeah.
For a 9-to-5
Indeed.
that doesn't give us a return that we can in turn receive from Jehovah. So,
Josh, thank you for joining us
Thank
on
you
Shabbat
so
Night
much.
Live. And thank you for joining us on Shabbat Night Live. We'll say Shavua Tov, have a good week, and we'll see you next week on Shabbat Night Live.